people of Israel and the state of Israel will be forever indebted to you for your magnificent efforts on our behalf. I want to thank, too, the King of Morocco, King Mohammed VI, for taking this historic decision to bring a historic peace between us.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by James Dorsey. He's a senior fellow at Singapore's S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, focused on the Middle East and North Africa. You know, Trump announced this again as a big breakthrough, but is it really? Morocco has had informal ties with Israel for years and had long been rumored to be ready to establish ties with Israel.
Well, Israel and many Arab states have long had ties, but indeed ties with Morocco were, in a sense, special, given the cooperation they had, both in terms of security as well as in terms of intelligence, and the fact that the largest diaspora Moroccan Jewish community is in Israel. So that's very significant. The fact that Morocco has now agreed to this is a big thing, because most Arab countries do not have diplomatic relations with Israel. Moreover, it has international consequences given the deal that was struck with regard to the status of the Western Sahara. So in that sense, I think it is important.
Right. So given the status of the Western Sahara, how is that likely to affect that long-standing conflict, given that the U.S. is now essentially picking sides in that?
Well, I think, first of all, we're going to have to see where this goes, because very much like U.S. recognition of Israeli annexation of the Golan Heights, as well as of East Jerusalem, what the Americans have maneuvered here is not anchored in international law. And so there's certainly going to be a response from in the United Nations. We're also going to have to see what Joe Biden does once he takes office as U.S. president. So it's a bit of a shaky ground. But on the other hand, on the ground itself, this is likely going to aggravate a situation in which already tensions were rising.
What about Saudi Arabia? Morocco has close ties with the kingdom. Could that make it more likely for Saudi Arabia then to be next to normalize ties with Israel?
I think you've got to look at a larger picture. The Saudis have been sending the United States in advance of Joe Biden very mixed signals. So on the one hand, they seem to be willing to find some sort of deal in resolving the crisis with Qatar. On the other hand, they've hardened their position on human rights, given various moves that they've taken in recent weeks. And you've had the most blistering attack on Israel by Prince Turki Al Faisal, the former Saudi intelligence minister, just days ago, in advance of Morocco's recognition of Israel. So I don't see that Morocco is going to be the decisive factor for Saudi Arabia to change its mind.
Mm-hmm. What about the Palestinians? King Mohammed VI says they won't let the Palestinians down and opts for a two-state solution. But doesn't this make that all the more difficult?
I think the Palestinians were in a difficult position already. What the Palestinians are hanging on to was a pressure tool that they thought they had that hasn't worked. So, with other words, for the last 2 decades, the Arab world has said, we will recognize Israel if you accept a two-state solution and implement it. That hasn't worked. Two decades later, nothing has changed. So now you have what appears to be an official abandonment, in a sense, of Palestinian demands by recognizing Israel, or as many of the states recognizing the Jewish state say, this is a way to increase pressure on Israel. The proof will be in the pudding. But I think that as long as you don't have two parties willing to tango in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it doesn't matter what you do. There's not going to be a dance.
Okay, we'll leave it there. James Dorsey in Singapore, thank you.